Hello, Pastor Leo Cunningham of Glenwood United Methodist Church, located on the west side of Columbus, Ohio. So I've gotten a lot of emails, phone calls about reopening the building. Now I'm using that phrase for a particular reason, because this is not only a pastoral reflection, but it's a teaching moment. The church was never closed. We just limited access to the building. If you go back and look through Scripture, there are many times where there wasn't a formal building to worship in. They worshiped in mobile tents. They built a temple. The temple was destroyed. There was an entire theological shift with regards to God hearing prayers and being able to worship God when you were not in the place you thought was central, being Jerusalem. We're going to talk about maybe some of this during Bible study later on. The return from diaspora, from being in Babylon, back to Jerusalem, building another temple, that temple being destroyed by the Romans in about between 70 and 80 AD, to places right now around the world that don't have buildings, but they've got churches. They don't have brick and mortar, but they have churches. We're trying to formulate plans that are going to be best utilized to keep our faith community safe, healthy, and well. But I want to reiterate this. I want to stress this. I've said it a few Sundays ago in the sermons. The church is the people. It's not the building. Glenwood, you've been in more than one building before. You started off in the living room of a family 128 years ago. We've only been in this location since 1961. And I get the fact that there are memories and emotions connected to the building. But we're still doing mission. We're still doing ministry. We're still finding a way to make sure we're worshiping together. We're finding ways to get connected. And in some cases, closer and deeper than we had before. But we have to do what's going to be helpful for us. And I want to say this as well. I know their business is opening. I know the gyms are opening and the salons are opening and restaurants went from patio only to inside only. And I know a lot of you were thinking, well, why can't we be like them? Because we're the Church of Jesus Christ. We're supposed to be better than the world. We're supposed to be the example about peace, mercy, justice, love, compassion. We are supposed to be the thermostat, not the thermometer for culture. We are supposed to be the thermostat. We're supposed to be setting the examples. And we've got to set the examples that are going to be best for us. And so we're working on these. We're working on policies. We're ordering supplies. We're ordering equipment. You would not believe how hard it is to still get hand sanitizer. Paper towels. We still have to meet the requirements for not only the local government, but the denomination, as well as our insurance providers. There's liability issues, so we just can't rush back into this. And I get that you're impatient. I get that you're frustrated. I get that you're sad and you're lonely and you're worried. Believe me. I hear it, I feel it, I experience it myself, and I have been. But I want you to know we're working on things. We're planning on things. And if there's one thing that I can give you a glimpse into me, I'm not going to tell you all the plans that I'm working on until I know they can happen. Case in point, I invited Bishop Palmer to come and preach for Pentecost weeks ago. Didn't find out about his agreement until the week before. But I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to get people sad, disappointed, or to try to say, well, you said this was going to happen and it didn't, because I know how people are. This isn't my first rodeo. But I at least want you to understand we're working on something. So I've got a graph here. Stay with me. I've got a graph. Because some of you have asked about this. On Sunday mornings, you have seen what looks like little yellow pieces of paper or something sticking up on the back of the pews. Let me grab one off of a pew right quick, and I'll explain what this is. So some of you have called, you've emailed. What are those things on the pews we see on Sunday mornings? It's a Post-it note. But what is a Post-it note for? So one thing that we did a few weeks ago, while trying to figure out a plan, was we measured 6 feet from the first row that someone could sit in. That would be the row the bell choir normally sits in. Okay, so this is the front of the sanctuary. You got the pulpit, you got the altar, you got the lectern, Alice playing violin, Lisa's on the keyboard, Missy is singing. Here's Ken with 2 guitars, and eventually one day Mark will be back on the drums. If you can see this, you've got black lines and you've got blue lines. The black lines and the blue lines represent pews. Not to scale, there are more pews here in the church. So what we've discovered is from here to here is a little over 6 feet. So we're a little over 6 feet. Now this is where it gets interesting. So if somebody sits here, I don't know if that red's coming through. I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because you check my monitors. So if somebody sits, let's do this in green. The green might be a little darker than that fading red. So if someone sits here in this spot, okay, hopefully you can see that X. Let me check the monitor. Yeah, okay. You have to have 6 feet this way, 6 feet this way. So what that means is you now have to skip an entire pew, okay? But you also have to go 6 feet this way. Now, 6 feet this way would then put somebody in this next pew here. Then you've got to go 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, which would be then this spot, which means you can sit in a row of pews, skip a pew, sit in a row, skip a pew, sit in a row, skip a pew. So then you've got to go 6 feet this way, 6 feet this way, 6 feet this way. You've got somebody here. And I did that through the entire sanctuary. And it's gotten a little warm. It's been about 2 weeks, and some of the Post-it notes have fallen off, and some of them are still here. But that's what those Post-it notes are. They're 6-foot area markers, which means, I'm going to go to this side of that's cleared out, which means if you're sitting here, there is actually going to be 2 sections. So if this is 6 feet, that means this is 6 feet, which means this line from this pew to this pew is 12 feet. Well, why is that 12 feet significant? Because all of the information coming from the choral societies and the science community, most of that, there's still debate, the scientists, people debate things, is when you sing, you pull in more air, you project more air. So that 6-foot distance we're hearing about is for talking. It's not for singing. That's why they're saying you can't have choirs, because they're going to spray further and they'll all inhale more. If you go back and Google and look at all of the churches that have had outbreaks in their churches with their restarts, the vast majority of them started from the choir. That's why we've got people separated. I don't want to have to say we can't do congregational singing, but there's a concern about congregational singing. Well, guess what? You're 12 feet. And if you're over this way, what happens is with these rows, you can only put one household. On these rows here, you can actually put 2, because you can put another house here. But all of this could change if we get stipulations that say you can only have a certain percentage of what you're zoned for with the fire codes. It could change if the local government says you can only have a percentage of your area. And some places have done that. If we've got to have signs up, we've got to have policies in place. We have to have hand sanitizers. There's conversations about whether or not we can have hymnals or not. But this is just a brief touching of what those little yellow pieces of paper are that you're seeing on Sunday morning in the videos. We're thinking about these things. We're working about these things. We're praying about these things. And I know a lot of you say, well, but the sanctuary is big enough. Why can't we just start? Got to have the rest of the things in place. Got to have the hand sanitizers. Got to have the policies written. Have to have the signage up. We're working on this stuff. We've ordered this stuff. We have to wait for it. That's one reason why communion has taken so long. We're going to have to go to individual small communion cups. That, or we have to do like prepackaged bread and juice boxes that we can safely distribute so people aren't touching the elements and we aren't passing the elements. We have to figure out how to do tithes and offerings, because all the information says you're not to pass a collection plate through the pews where everyone's going to be touching it. So we're trying to figure out new ways. I'm talking to other pastors. I'm talking to people from other denominations that aren't just United Methodists. I'm taking information and I'm emailing it to the leadership board. I'm not sending it to everybody. I'm sending it to the leaders that we voted on to be our representation during charge conference. So we've got a leadership team. I'm emailing the leadership team documents and things and getting their feedback and getting their information. And for me, it's not as simple as, well, can't we just open for this one thing? That's not a good idea. Because the instant you open for one thing and you don't have everything in place, the next thing that happens is somebody else is going to say, well, wait a minute, you opened for so-and-so, why can't you open up for me? Well, you made an exception here, even though things weren't in place, things weren't set up, things weren't ready. Then it turns into, well, you did it for them, why can't you do it for me? Then we've got a whole different set of problems that we have to address. And I'm okay with addressing problems. I have a problem with that. My name's on the marquee. Buck stops here. That's how that goes. But I want you to understand, I'm working with the DS. I'm working with other pastors. I've got friends in the medical community who are nurses and doctors, and we're having these conversations about how do we do this in a safe and responsible manner. And I know other people are doing things, and this church is opening, and that denomination is opening, but I just remember, I don't know, when I was a kid, my parents would often say, well, what they do in their house is their business. What we do in this house is ours. And just because they're doing it doesn't mean we're going to do it, because that might not be a good idea. And I get it. I understand it. I don't want to be the site of an outbreak. I don't. I don't want to have to bury some of you because we rushed this. Because you know what happens when you go into the hospital with COVID-19? You can't have visitors. No family, no friends, unless it's end of life. And in some hospitals, they just still don't let you in for end of life. I don't want to rush this back, but I do want you to understand, we're working on things. We're working on plans. We're trying to get it figured out. Another thing, they talk about air exposure. So we've had the company that does the AC has been here multiple times in the last 2 weeks because the education center is opening. They've got stipulations that are wild for what they have to do to be able to reopen next week. And they've got to meet those. We have to meet those because if we don't, it's a problem with the state. And the GCEC is an extension of our ministry here. They aren't renting space down there. That is our ministry. Those are our kids that we are taking care of. And I know you don't always see them on Sunday mornings, but they're still in the space. They're still coming up for chapel. Some of them have come to the Thanksgiving and the fall festival. So they're working now on making sure everything's up to code, that everything's ready to go. And we're working on stuff here. You're not forgotten. Your phone calls and your emails aren't falling to the wayside. I've talked to some of you about this. And I'll keep talking to you and try to reframe the conversation so it makes sense. And there's part of me that wants to believe when we reopen, there are going to be new people here. They might not be here right away because, the restaurants have been open, but I haven't stepped foot in one yet. I have not stepped foot in a restaurant even though I'm allowed to. I haven't done it yet. But as time goes on, I want your friends and your family who are part of the community to know that you're coming back to a safe place. Because a lot of you are above that 65 age. When new people think about coming to a church, I want them to think about the fact that this was a church that was not rushing to come back. That this is a church that really cares about the physical and the spiritual well-being of the people who they encounter. Not just in the building, but also out in the streets. That's what we're doing this for. But this is just part of the plan. I'm not going to give you the entire plan. But I just want you to know we're working on things. A little bit of more grace, a little more time, and we'll get there. We'll get there together. This is about reopening the building, not reopening the church. Jesus had a church, never had a building. Jesus is the church. We're the church. We're the body of Christ, the people, not the structures. So yeah, I went a little long. I got a little passionate because this matters to me, because you matter to me. Your well-being matters to me. Pastor means shepherd. I'm just trying to keep an eye out on my sheep, because at some point, I'll have to give an account for how I cared for the sheep. I'm not losing any sheep to virus wolves if I can possibly prevent it. But that's a really long explanation for what the little yellow pads are, the little yellow piece of paper on the pews. I had no idea how long I've gone. I've had to check the monitors. I'm the only person here filming tonight. It's 11:15. It's 11:15, and I'm trying to get this figured out. Because I want you to know, because it matters, because it's important. So I'll just leave this image up one more time. Pew, skip a pew. Pew, skip a pew. Pew. All the black lines are pews you can sit in. All the blue lines are pews you can't sit in. The X's are if you sit here, where's your 6 feet space at? Where's your 6 feet space at? And I don't want to show you what's happening for Pentecost yet. But if you've ever sat in a pew and you've noticed the joists, the connectors for the pews, because the pews are really long, the space between those connectors is 6 feet. It's a little more than 6 feet. Maybe what I'll do is I'll take a picture and I'll post it on the Facebook page, and maybe have a digital ministry throw it on the website as well, just so you have an idea. But this is what it is. Pray with me, stay with the faith community. We're going to get there. We're in the home stretch. Let's not do anything rash or rush and then have to shut everything back down. It's only from what any of us can tell from what we are watching, it's only going to be a few more Sundays. But we're going to do this. We've been doing this one way or another together. Pastor Leo Cunningham, coming to you from 11:15 at night from the main sanctuary of Glenwood United Methodist Church. God's grace, God's peace, God's love. We'll leave the graphic up for a little bit if you want to look at it and get some more ideas. Good night, or good day, or good afternoon for whenever you're watching the video.